Okay, hello. Welcome everybody. Let's go ahead and get this presentation started. Hi, welcome. My name is Doug Shook. I know I've met some of you, but I have not met all of you. But I am from the Computer Science Department, Computer Science and Engineering Department. I'm a senior lecturer. I've been teaching here at Washington University for over a decade now, over in computer science. I actually graduated from here back in 2013. Yeah. So yeah, been hanging out here for a little bit. Very happy to have you all here today. There's plenty of fruit back there, as I'm sure you noticed walking in. If you want some more, don't feel free to get up and grab some more. You know, I have to take all that home and eat it by myself, so I would rather you all help me out and do that. Just kidding. Kind of. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about giving an effective poster. I am recording this and I'm going to ship it out to all of the different programs either later today or early next week, so you're welcome to take notes if you want to, but also you'll get all of this later on after the fact as well. And let's just go ahead and hop right on in. This is going to be very interactive. I need you to kind of help me out starting right away. We're talking about communication. So what we're doing is taking our ideas, our research, and trying to communicate those ideas to other people. So communication is to inform, which is our big goal in this case, right? Taking some information and inform, or perhaps persuade, sort of a subtext in a lot of cases, trying to change people's minds about a particular topic. And then last, but perhaps least, or maybe not, depending on how you view it, is entertainment. So some forms of communication purely for entertainment. Our field, not so much, right? We're definitely leaning more towards the information. But let's talk real quick. I need your help with this because we all communicate on a regular basis. What are some things that can happen that get in the way of effective communication? What are some things? Yeah. I'm sorry? A language barrier. Yeah, what else? What else just happened between me and him just now that can get in the way of effective communication? Having stuff in your mouth? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to give you a little bit of a hard time. But yeah, right? Yeah, language barriers, anything else? Anything else that can get in the way of communication? What about when you're talking to your friends or loved ones, your parents, for example? It's not exactly a language barrier necessarily, but I know when I'm talking to my mom, I have to use a different vocabulary than when I'm talking to my friends, for example. My mom's not going to understand certain acronyms or certain words that I use with my friends, or there might be certain words that I just don't want to use with my mom, right? Yeah, what else? A difference in knowledge, yeah. So we have a word for that, actually, a word to describe those words. Starts with a J, anybody know? Jargon, yeah, jargon. So some jargon's unavoidable. Any computer science majors are nodding their heads like, oh, yeah, but I'm not a bio person. I assume bio people are also like, oh, yeah. Like it's just part of the deal, right? It's part of learning, getting deep into particular knowledge about sciences. There's going to be a lot of jargon. There's going to be a lot of different terms, a lot of words. And those acronyms too, right? Those acronyms too can get us into a lot of trouble. These kinds of things that are happening are going to be happening, rapid fire during a poster session. Because let's talk about what posters are and what this form of communication is versus the other kinds of communication that we're probably more well-versed in, more practiced in, right? So why are we using posters? Let's contrast posters with what I think most people are generally used to with distributing information, whether scientific or otherwise. It's what we're doing right now. There's a person or maybe a few people standing up on a stage in front of a podium talking about a particular topic and dispensing that information to a group of people who have decided to attend that particular topic or were forced to attend or whatever the reason is for being in that particular situation. With a poster session, we're kind of flipping the script, right? Flipping the script a little bit. I'm taking my hard work, my stuff, and I'm trying to advertise it as best as I possibly can, within reason, right? I'm not busting out the neon lights and the billboards and stuff. That's a little too much for a scientific conference. But I'm trying to advertise my work in a way that's respectful and approachable to other people in my field. So instead of saying, come listen to me talk about stuff for an hour, I have to attract people to come take a peek at my work. But think about what that means. We now know that if we get somebody stopping and asking to you about that poster, they're genuinely interested, right? There's something on that poster, something that caught their eye, something that attracted their interest, something that drew them to your thing in particular, right? Which can be a very valuable connection to make. Not only that, but you can get through a lot more of them. So I'm giving this talk for an hour. There's a lot of you here, and I might be able to form some connections with a few of you over this hour, but I'm just not going to be able to have time to stop and chat with all of you for a few minutes, even though I might like to do that. With the poster session, as you're going to see, that's actually the opposite. You're actually going to have a few minutes to chat with everybody who comes by and wants to talk to you about your poster, be able to make a lot more direct connections, even though they may be kind of short. But hopefully exchange contact information, right? Do some networking and talk to people who are more interested in your work and who might be working on similar topics that you're working in, right? Form research connections for later research projects as you move on to grad school and beyond. So, you will still see talks if you ever find yourself at a conference, but you'll also find these poster sessions. Here's some other. Let's see how well I did. Did I get all of these? I got a bunch of them, I think. Discussion, networking. Better for works in progress. Yeah. So if you are kind of at a halfway point or not quite done with everything yet, posters are a bit more informal than giving a talk. So it's not going to be as big of a deal if you can just be like, to be continued, right? That's more of an expectation for posters. Cool. So with that in mind, I think most of you are here because you have been tasked with creating a poster, right? And we're going to talk about the poster event that we've got coming up. We'll talk about that towards the end of the talk today. But let's talk about what an effective poster is, what it contains, how are we going to start making these things, and we'll actually take a look at a few examples and critique them. See what we like, see what we don't like. Poster, we got 3 categories up here. Posters should be focused. So there's a topic, and everything on that poster needs to be related to that topic, right? So that topic is the title of your poster. You should be able to look at every single element on that poster and somehow relate it back to the title of your poster. That's what we mean by focus. If you can't do that, then it's an indication that maybe that information doesn't need to be there. Maybe you're trying to cram too much in. Maybe you're taking too broad of a look at what's going on. Posters are graphic, so the very nature of posters, right? Yes, I am showing you graphics on the screen right now, but when you're in a poster session, so it's the person talking to you is not a guarantee, right? It's the graphics that's drawing people in. So you're here to listen to me talk, and I'm using the graphics to assist me with that talk. In a poster session, the poster is what's drawing people's eyes, is what making them want to come up and talk to you. So the very graphic nature of the poster means that we want it to be as visual as possible. Anything that lends itself to being displayed visually is going to be a plus. And, spoiler alert, text usually ain't it. Text is dense. Does that mean you shouldn't use any text? No, you're going to have to use some, right? But too much text is definitely a drawback. Trying to throw too many words onto your poster is going to turn people off and make them think, ugh, I came here to look at a poster, not read a novel, right? That's kind of what we're hoping to avoid, kind of the situation that we're not looking to create. We want to create situations that are going to invite people to come talk to us about our work and be interested in the stuff that we have to say. And then finally, posters do actually have a flow to them. So the information on our poster should be displayed with a particular order, much like you think of stories having a beginning, middle, and an end, right? Your poster also does sort of have a natural flow, a natural beginning, middle, and end to it. And you'll notice this as you start to look at more posters, as you see more examples, they all sort of follow the same general flow. And so we can use that to our advantage when we're designing our poster, when we're laying out the different elements of our poster, to decide where on the actual layout they need to go. Is this more towards the beginning, more towards the middle, more towards the end? Here's a very, very, very great link that has lots of videos describing in more detail all of these different categories, as well as, what this really gets into, if you're super interested, is more like graphic design kind of stuff. And so if you're interested in that kind of thing, that's what this website goes into in more detail. But I'm going to move on and talk about, more effective traits that we want to see in our posters. I think I've actually already covered. So let's see. All right. Let's talk about some of the biggest mistakes that I see on posters. And when I say biggest mistakes that I see on posters, I guarantee that you can go to any scientific conference and still see people doing these kinds of things, right? It's somewhat perhaps due to lack of knowledge about good setup and design, but also, I mean, these are just easy traps to fall into. It's natural as a human to want to explain as much as possible about this thing that you've spent so much time working on, right? So it kind of feels unnatural to scale it back. And so this idea of making the text small so that I can fit a few more words in. Please refrain from doing that. Remember that the average person is not going to be standing up next to your poster, reading distance away from it, right? They're going to be walking by and catching your poster. So if the text is too small for them to read it as they're moving by, it's not effective. That's not doing you any good. That's not helping your information get out there into the world. So small text is bad. Lots of text is also bad. We really want to have something visual to show. And we'll talk about more visual elements in just a bit. Cool. Visual grammar. Yeah. Visual chaos is the case where, I don't think I actually have any examples that I would, well, maybe we'll see one or two that are especially bad perhaps, but think of it, this is a very dated reference now as we go along, but like a newspaper column has, or a newspaper has different columns in it, right? That's also kind of what we would expect to see for our poster. The big thing that you actually, kind of contrast this that I have on the next slide, a lot of people coming into posters, making scientific posters, their biggest, example prior to this is one of these guys, right? Oh, I am so looking forward to this. My daughter's starting kindergarten, and I cannot wait for the science fairs. It's going to be so much fun. But this is not a science fair. We're in college. We're in university now, right? We're doing research. So this is perfectly acceptable for, a poster board at a science fair, but this is not the kind of organization that we're looking for on our scientific posters. This is a bit too rudimentary. I'm not trying to knock this, right? This is great. We're just looking to level this up a little bit, make it a bit more mature for the type of information that we're trying to present. So let's talk about, let's take a look at a few good examples of the flow of the poster. I've got, I think, two good examples, and although even the good examples have some things that are, I think, could be criticized, and then one example that's maybe not so hot. And so for each one of these, I want to think, this is also subjective, right? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts as to what is good, what is not so good. Can you tell who this poster is for, right? Anything that should be changed? What's actually on this poster? Can you tell what the poster contains, right? Is that clear? I don't expect you to read every word. In fact, you can see probably here's our first example. Take a few minutes or a minute or two. You can talk to your neighbors as well. Think about what you like. Think about what you don't like. Think about what you might change on this poster. Think about the flow. I know this is the first time I'm asking you to do this. There are no wrong answers. Okay, we've had a minute or two to talk about it. Let's try to dissect this poster a little bit. Let's see what good things there are. Hello, yeah, sorry, I guess that mic isn't on, huh? one of these was on. All right, let's talk about this poster. What was good about it? What was not so good about it? Let's start with the topic. So remember, the goal of the poster. If somebody's walking by this poster, they should be able to tell what your poster is. It should draw them in, right? It should give them a reason to stop and be like, oh, I want to know more about that, right? So can we tell what this poster is about? Is it easy for somebody to quickly look at this poster and be like, oh, I know what that's about, and make a decision as to whether they want to stop or not? How do we feel about that? Yeah? What parts of the poster contribute to that? Yeah?
There's a huge manatee on it.
Yeah.
Like the title.
Yep. Perfect. So you nailed both of them. The title and the big old picture of the manatee. I mean, very clear right off the bat. You know what this poster is about. If you care about manatees, and let's be real, who doesn't, then you're going to stop and read this poster. And if you don't care about manatees, then you're heartless and this talk isn't for you. What about the flow? Can we tell where the poster starts, and is there a general progression, through the poster? Yeah. Yeah, and your poster, I think, is, should follow a similar kind of approach. You can see introduction, objectives. Well, wait a second, that kind of feels like one of them papers that you probably have been reading a bunch of over the summer, and that's not, there aren't as many sections as you're going to find in a full scientific paper. We don't have that much space, but it is going to follow the same kind of general beginning, middle, end that you would expect to find in a scientific paper, where you are setting up your research, setting the stage, telling people what your goals are, what your objectives are, what you're setting out to do, describing how, which this is, I think, one of the biggest track places that I've seen is the methodology. Be careful with this. Is the how important? Yes, absolutely. Do people, the average people coming through want to read 100 pages about how you collected all the data? No, probably not. They're probably more interested in the outcome, right? They're probably more interested in the grand finale, right? The bigger picture, the bigger implications. That doesn't mean you should leave it out. It's very important, right? People are going to want, if they have more questions, you're going to be right there. You can tell them. You can explain to them in more detail about how you collected all of the data from 1,000 manatees over 3 summers or whatever the case was, right? So, don't feel like you got to put it all on the poster. That's a common section that gets kind of bloated. You can see, to reflect what I was just talking about, that whole middle column is dedicated to results, right? That entire middle column is dedicated to results. And it's very visual. There's a plot for every single model that this particular project created, which is what we like to see. All right. Anything we don't like about this poster? I think, in general, I'm a pretty big fan of it, but anything we don't like about this? Yeah. All right, text over the picture of the manatee is kind of tacky, subjective, but I actually agree with you, right? Does it detract from the message? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Not a lot of color. Not a lot of color. Color is one of those things that you have to be careful of. Yes, you can draw attention to certain things with color, and color is definitely good when displaying plot data, for example, right? You can also overdo it. Lots of colors is going to feel like sensory overload. And then you also have to be careful about, red-green colorblind is surprisingly common. So things like that you need to pay attention to as well. But yes, I generally agree with you that it does look a little flat color-wise. There's one very important thing that I think should be fixed. Yeah, in the back. The text is kind of tiny. One particular, I think, piece of text is far too small. Discussion? Well, I was actually thinking the authors. They're not giving themselves enough credit. They worked real hard on this stuff, and then they made their names really, really tiny. I mean, that's very modest, but this isn't the time to be modest. You're standing right there explaining your stuff. You want people to know who you are. You did this, right? So I think the text of the people's names should be bigger. If for no other reason, use the walk-by test again. Maybe somebody's walking by and they're late to a talk or whatever, but they see your manatee poster and like, that sounds really cool. I need to remember to email that guy later, right? If your name's too small, they're not going to know who to email later. So make sure to have your contact info prominent right under the title. Take ownership. take ownership of your work. That's why you're there. Absolutely. Let's do another one. Let's take a look at this one. Same deal. I'll give you another couple minutes to talk about what you like, what you don't like. Okay, let's start with the same general idea. So first thing was topic, right? The walk-by test. You know, if you look at this poster, can you tell what it's about? How are you feeling about that? Feel like it passes? You feel like if you walk by this, you look at this poster, like, yeah, I got it. I know what that's about. Yeah, no. Text is too small. All right, I heard a lot of people talking about how small this text is. I agree. I agree that the text on this one is way too small. It's not a fair judgment on PowerPoint, to be fair, but even if you had it blown up and printed out on a poster, you would say, yeah, the text is too small. Very hard to read. Any other issues with this one? There are some other issues that I have with it, perhaps. I mean, over here, you got these fancy little graphics that describe what this thing is capable of, but there's no plots, there's no data collection. I mean, maybe there just wasn't any data collection. I actually didn't read this poster. I don't know if they were trying to collect the data about a particular thing or not. But to me, you know, it doesn't seem like a very they're just spouting off stats, right? They're spouting off stats. I can read those stats and keep on walking. Why do I need to stop and talk to you about those stats? You know, that's not a reason. That's not a very compelling reason for me to talk. You may agree, disagree. I know it's all subjective. I think this one also kind of suffers a little bit from the science fair poster phenomenon, where you got the 6 different blocks. It does follow the flow. I do agree that it kind of follows a 3-column flow like we saw in the prior one, but it's a bit more blocky. Yeah.
I think the title's
Yeah. That's hard, right? So that's a hard balance to strike, because the last title was it got your attention, right? Will manatee be alive? But it's also a bit sensational, the way that it's phrased, which is perhaps also, so it's tricky. How corny is too corny? You gotta know your audience. And your audience, granted, is gonna be a bunch of nerds, so for the most part, in your field, you gotta know your audience. Let's do one more. Oh. All right. You can kind of see why I put this one on here, right? We're bucking the trend with this one. We only have 2 columns instead of 3. This is actually perfectly acceptable. This is okay to do. You can certainly do it this way. There's nothing inherently wrong with having a vertical poster as opposed to a horizontal one. But I do think it's important to understand how human beings actually view this kind of content, right? There's what's called, vertical gravity of your eyes. Your eyes are actually drawn to move downwards more so than left to right when you're reading things, when you think about it. So it's actually more natural to trail downwards, which I think kind of speaks strongly to having 2 columns instead of 3, right? Because you're actually using the up and down motion more. But I think the contrary is, if you look at these plots, and then all of the space that's just not used here, that's not good. That's not a good effective use of space. If you had 3 columns, they would be, a bit not as wide, perhaps, and be able to use that space more effectively, or fit some texture on that space. It's also really small. That's a really hard plot to read, even if your face is right up next to it. So I think the main takeaway here isn't necessarily that all vertical posters are bad, although I also think that you won't see a whole lot of them at a traditional scientific poster session. However, there are certain sets of data that are just naturally going to lend themselves to a more vertical format. And in that case, you know, this is going to be the right way to go. It's a more contextual situation, right? You have to examine your data, your project, think about your design, and make the right choice. Question?
I don't know, is it goal to like fill up as much space as possible? I feel like having white space helps with that, not feeling overwhelmed.
It does. No, I agree with you, but not when it's with a visualization would be my counter argument, right? When it's a visualization and I see white space next to it, especially one that's this small, my brain is like, why did you cram this in when you got more space? You could have used to make that bigger and easier to understand. That's mine. I agree with you generally though. Cramming stuff in just for the sake of cramming, you know, filling the space is not good. I want to devote as much space to this and not this. The ratio here is off. Way more text than visual. I would rather see those plots be bigger and try and reduce text as much as possible. I think one thing to keep in mind as well, one thing that people can get kind of tripped up on, posters are really not as formal as a scientific paper is. And so while you are in a formal-ish setting, you know, at a conference, at a poster session, right, you're probably going to be dressed up, looking all nice. You don't have to necessarily use the super formal language that you're going to see in a scientific paper, right? It can be a bit more of an informal style language on the poster, which will in turn make it easier for people to access your work. Because as we all probably know, sometimes it can take a few tries through those papers to properly absorb all that stuff. With the poster, we don't want that. That's exactly what we don't want to happen. We want to make it as easy as possible, right? All right. A few years back, actually right before COVID or so, I believe this professor was from NC State. I linked the YouTube video down here so that you can look this up later when I send this out to y'all. Proposed a pretty radical way of rethinking scientific posters. And so this is kind of what he came up with. The whole point was to, I think one of the main premises was to avoid cognitive overload. So kind of what we were just talking about. Posters that are too dense, right? Just filling every single inch of the space with information, trying to get as much information on the poster and then therefore out to people as possible. It's counterintuitive. It doesn't actually work. It overloads people's brains, right? They start filtering out stuff because they just can't accept anymore, and then the message doesn't get us across as well as you might think it does. So this is a design that was proposed, you know, by someone to say that, all right, we're going to actually leave, you know, the main center of our poster largely blank. Put our main finding right smack there in the center. Because again, remember, what is our purpose? Our purpose is to attract people to come talk to us, come read more about our work. So let's devote a big chunk of our poster to that, right? You can see they're using, what, like 2/3 of the space, 3/4 of the space just for, here's what we did, come talk to me about it. And then the details are kind of pushed off to the sides. You've got your usual beginning, middle, end story over here, and then the visualizations that back up the conclusions come over here on the other side, right? So this is a pretty radically different way of thinking about the poster, created by somebody who, you know, studies this stuff and knows what he's talking about in the field of design and communication. But the main issue, the main thing we're fighting against, so I can tell you from experience, I've not seen this take off a whole lot. Anybody know why? Anybody know why this format? I mean, it seems to make a lot of sense. It looks cool, looks modern, looks slick. Anybody know why it's struggling to take off? It's probably the same reason that you're not going to use it, if I had to guess. If you go back to your lab and you say to the people you've been working with all summer, hey, I need help on this poster, they're going to pull up a poster that they worked on. And how did they get that poster? Well, they talked to the person before them who worked on a poster, who talked to the person before them who worked on a poster. We've been doing it this way for years, for decades. Not this way, this way, this way, right? We've been doing it this way forever, for a very, very long time. You say poster, and this is what people think about, not this. So we're really kind of fighting that human tradition, I feel like, in a lot of ways, just what people are used to. So, you know, if you actually believe in this stuff, go watch that YouTube video. It's a great watch. You don't have to agree with it, but I certainly think it's worth thinking about. It's interesting, especially if you like this kind of stuff, what we're talking about here today. You might want to give this a try. The links to the templates are all available online. You can give this a shot if you want to. But we're not quite there yet, and that's okay. These posters also do the job. All right, here are some more concrete tips, because we're now getting into the nitty-gritty. We said that, you know, don't keep your text too small. Okay, well, how small is too small? How big is too big? Let's talk about some actual, you know, tips that you should be doing, things that you should be doing when you're making your posters. All right, so small areas of text. Small areas of text, we're talking paragraph, 2 paragraphs of text in a block at the most. If you start writing more than that, you should start thinking about, it's a lot of words here. Can I break this up with a diagram, some sort of visual to explain, right? This is the basic flow. So the beginning and the middle and the end, like we were talking about. Be sure to use white space around sections. Avoid cramming stuff in. The ratio, there is no ratio. I can't tell you, you know, it should be 50% graphs, 50% text. There is no magic number, right? I definitely think that if you ever have a choice between graphics and text, it should be graphics every time, as much as possible. But definitely try and keep it somewhat balanced, if not more on the graphical side. The column-based format, like we've seen, is pretty standard. So if you want to go with the 3-column based sideways format, that's actually a pretty safe bet. All right. Yeah, so here you go. Bullet points, if you decide to use them. I'm actually not a huge fan of bullet points, but if you want to, try and keep it on the small side. And then here's one of the more commonly cited size guides for text. In terms of where that text can be found. You don't need me to sit here and talk to you about all this. You can look it up when you need to when you're making your poster, right? But also just use the eyeball test. Look at it. Don't just say, oh, the number says this, I'm going to use it. Look at it. Make sure that it makes sense when you look at it. This is definitely a good place to start. I certainly wouldn't go any smaller than these values, right? Without a very good reason. We talked about colors. One thing that should be very much noted, definitely dark letters on a light background is easier to read. I know that we're talking about posters here, right? So yeah, dark theme on your computer is cool and all, but we're talking about posters. Don't show up with a black poster with white text on it. You're not going to be cool. It's going to be weird, right? Okay. Yes, and we mentioned this before, right? We actually prefer top to bottom motion. We naturally, our eyes are going to move top to bottom and then left to right. So that's why you see that 3-column format, and that's why you don't see 3 horizontal stripe format. That would also be kind of a weird looking, unnatural feeling poster, right? Let's talk about data. Let's talk about plots. So visualization is very, very, very important, especially considering that, you know, they're the main purpose. They're sort of the main draw of your poster. You have to avoid the chart clutter. So this is actually the same chart shown in 2 different ways, and this way has all of the clutter removed, which is just going to make it very easy for your readers to quickly look at it and try and, remember, at a glance, understand what this relationship is. They're not going to have time to sit there and examine, okay, this, you know, data point falls just below this one, and that means it's 7.5, right? If they want to do that, they'll stop and talk to you, and you can have that conversation with them. But that's not what the purpose of this is. The purpose of this is to quickly display a relationship or some other important feature of your research so that somebody can quickly look at it and understand. Notice that the lines have been removed, the background's been removed to just make those trend lines really stand out as much as possible. The individual data points are not labeled. It's not important in this context, right? If they want the data points, in your email, you can send it to them, right? The axes have been watered down significantly, right? We don't need to have all those different labels. It's not necessary. We're really just trying to get people the big picture takeaway on our visualizations, on our plots. So yeah, no grid lines, no backgrounds, no data points. Yep. And definitely keep the labels though. Obvious. Hopefully that's obvious. Don't scrap the labels. Keep those labels. All right. The other thing to talk about is the actual poster creation process. So the typical way to do this is in PowerPoint. You should ask people in your lab. They probably already have a PowerPoint file they can give to you that's set up for a poster, or they have a poster that they've done. So there's a PowerPoint. The slide should be 36 inches by 48 inches. You can set all that in PowerPoint. Again, ask people for help or Google it if you need to. But that size is important because when you go to send this to the printer, they are going to be expecting a certain size poster. So make sure you've got all these things. It always helps to double check, make sure those things are set up. You don't want to have a printing surprise at the last minute. It's never a fun thing. Have somebody take a look at it, right? Have somebody take a look at it because we all suffer from our own biases. You're going to think something looks great, something looks great, something looks great. And if 10 other people don't agree with you, well, then you need to have somebody tell you that and fix it. So make sure to have a couple other people in your lab look at your poster, go through it with you, point out some things that maybe you overlooked or didn't notice. Presenting. So I actually have been alluding to this, but we haven't talked about what happens when you actually get somebody on the hook, right? Somebody's like, I gotta talk to that person. Well, now you gotta be ready. So you gotta be ready to talk. But it's not that bad, right? Again, they're not expecting a full hour-long presentation. They're not going to stand there and talk to you that long. Even if they wanted to, they won't because it's a poster session. They understand that the idea of a poster session is to stop, chat for a few minutes, and then move on. So you should be prepared to talk about your work, well, obviously yourself, right? And the people who are going to be there. You should be able to answer common questions. So, what those common questions are, you may have a good idea before you get there. You may not really know so much until you've had a few people come up to you and chat about it, but I'm sure you'll get a feel for it quickly. You got a few minutes. That's the main point I'm trying to make here. So if somebody comes up, talks to you about their poster, wants to talk to you about the poster, you've got them for a few minutes. And actually, I think it's to your advantage if you can. Not just do necessarily a one-on-one, but even small groups of like 2 or 3 people if they arrive at roughly the same time. Because that way you're not having to repeat yourself as many times. You can try and cover more ground that way. But definitely be aware and respectful of your audience. Yes, they're interested in your poster, but there's other posters there too. So don't talk their ear off, right? If they're expressing, extreme interest and but they should, you've got other people to talk to as well. So don't be afraid to be like, all right, I'm going to go talk to this person now. Don't be afraid to, ask people to move along if you've been talking to them for a little while. Be respectful. Don't feel like you need to prep to talk about your stuff for more than a few minutes. And you can always just give them your email address or some other way to contact you if you run out of time. Okay, this is a big one. If you're giving a talk, you definitely want to practice. Like, that's a no-brainer. But for this, it's definitely more informal. So if you practice a lot, if it feels like it's rehearsed, sometimes people will come away thinking that you're kind of robotic, perhaps. Spewing the same lines over and over again. So knowing what you're going to talk about is good. but saying the same thing over and over again 10 times, not. So, you know, kind of have to find a nice balance there between keeping it conversational, but also having a good idea of what you need to talk about and what people are going to expect to talk to you about. Remember, it's a very human element by the time they're talking to you, so you can, you know, kind of read your audience a little bit. I think generally most people aren't there to hear the numbers. They don't want it to be dry. So keep it light, tell a story, keep it as human as possible. All right, let's talk about the actual event. There's actually 2 of them. 2 poster sessions. That's because we've got a lot of different summer programs. So the last part of today is really just to make sure that you all are aware of what's coming up for the end of the summer here. For those of you in the computer science program that I'm running, I'm the program director of the Computer Science RU, and then the WUSEF, which I know several of you are here today as well. Your poster session will be on Friday the 28th, and for those of you who are not in those programs, which leaves thermal management cards and CEMB, yours will be the following week on Thursday, August 1st. It's going to be right out there in Whitaker Atrium. So we'll have poster boards all set up for you to come bring your posters. I'll talk about printing your posters in just a moment. And the way that it works is that half of the people will present their posters first. The other half will go through the gallery, right? And you'll actually be judging the posters at that time. So you're the presenters and the judges. So you'll be filling out little feedback forms about the posters that you've been assigned to judge. And then after the first half goes, we switch roles. So if you were presenting, you are now walking through, talking to people about their posters and judging while the other half presents. And then at the end, we actually do have an award ceremony. The dean has come in the past and said a few words and presented. There are some prizes for the best posters. And that'll be true of both events. Both events will have awards presented. So yeah, you should definitely talk to your individual program directors if you are unclear about, you know, how to participate in this event. So each of the programs is managing their own participants. So please, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you know, your PIs and your program directors are aware that this is coming up, and they probably have already sent you out some information. I hope they have, or they will soon, I'm sure, if they haven't done so already. And you are going to have to submit your poster title here by whoops, I must have the dates wrong on one of these. Is Thursday? Thursday's the 3rd, isn't it? Not the 1st. Okay. Boom. Let's fix that right now. My fault. I thought that date seemed off, but I didn't know. Okay. Yeah, so you are going to need to submit some information about your poster a couple days ahead of time. So that's why we're telling you not to procrastinate. There's, you know, we hope you get started on this sooner rather than later. The other thing that you have to keep in mind is that you're gonna have to print. You're gonna have to print your posters. So you'll be able to print your posters here on campus. Again, your program directors are going to send you this information if they haven't done so already. I know for the computer science people, I haven't actually sent out specific printing instructions yet. I'm going to do it next week. So if you haven't heard from them directly, sit tight. It'll be coming out to you soon. Here's a basic overview though. Whenever you get your poster looking good in PowerPoint, you're just going to export it to a PDF. And then this link right here is a link to the engineering IT page, the McKelvey engineering IT page for poster printing. There's some more information here about what they're expecting, but really the important thing here is the printing request form. So if you click on this form link, we can just walk through this real quick to make sure there's no surprises when you have to go fill this out yourself. These are very self-explanatory, right? You can see that engineering wants 3 business days. So you'll have to do some math in your head to think about, all right, if I'm presenting on, you know, Friday the 28th, that means you really ought to have your poster in, Monday and Tuesday's probably even pushing it, right? So probably by Monday at the latest would be a good day to get your poster done. The name of your PI, the department you're associated with, the cost center. So these posters do cost money to print, but you don't have to pay for them. The school's going to pay for them. The program director for your program is going to have to tell you what to put in this box. So again, they'll send that information out to you if they haven't done so already. You can skip this section. You don't need to worry about this funding work tag. And then the size of the poster, I mean, you'll get that directly out of PowerPoint, but really everybody should be that same size of 36 by, I forget what it was. But anyway, it's on the slides. Yeah. And then you attach your PDF to be printed and submit that. So I know it says 3 business days here, and I'm trying to really motivate you all to get things submitted as soon as possible. But the other thing I'll say is that it is summer. There's probably what I'm trying to say is if you submit this, you'll pick your poster up in Lopata Hall, room 408. So Lopata Hall is actually on the main campus there, down kind of by the library. It's not far from the library. Room 408. And you might want to, check after a day or two and see if they're able to get it quicker than the 3-day turnaround. If they don't have anything going on, they might be able to turn around a little bit faster. I wouldn't count on that though. Just something that's worth checking on. Okay, that's it. I know I dumped a lot of information on you. Does anybody have any questions? Especially, I'm happy to answer questions about anything, but especially questions about the poster printing, poster Palooza sessions coming up. I want to make sure everybody is on the same page about that, but happy to take any questions at all. Yeah? Is that what I said? I see that now, yeah. I'm gonna have to double. Yeah, I'm gonna have to double check those numbers. I see what you're talking about here with the 42 inches. I'm gonna have to double check those. I will get back to you when I send out the video recording. Yeah. Any other questions I can answer for y'all? Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming out. I'll stick around if you have any questions. It looks like there's still some fruit. Please take some. Yeah, thanks. Please take some fruit with you, and I'll see you at the poster sessions. I'll be there.